Hello and welcome to the A-rated Rogan series, where we upgrade this house built in the De Valera era to be a modern A-rated family home. In today's episode, let's look at upgrading the plumbing system along with our bathroom upgrade to be more sustainable and more comfortable. Let's get into it. So in executing this mini project, there are two elements to it. There's number one, upgrading of the water services to be suitable for the end state, and there's the execution of the fit out of the bathrooms and downstairs loos. I'm going to focus principally on the water services because I think the team here is about how to get to an A-rated home, and the decorative elements of what the bathroom looks like aren't as important to that. And the kind of criteria I will judge success by is, am I able to have good high pressure showers, you know, more than one person being able to shower at the same time, either in the same shower or in separate showers in the house, and am I maximizing the use of the solar PV electricity, the renewable energy, even though most people in the house shower either first thing in the morning or last thing at night. So those are the kind of two main criterias. So to start off, let's look at, I've just done a simple process flow diagram. It's incomplete, don't draw any infer any kind of intelligence off this, of what a traditional or typical domestic Irish water services installation looks like. So this will be quite common for anyone in Ireland with a house that was installed roughly in the 1950s onwards. So on the left you can see we have our incoming water mains, and it's coming from Uisce Éireann. And it's, I say pressurized, it could be 1 bar, could be 5 bar, could vary during the day, could vary at night, whatever. You get your potable water at a kitchen tap immediately off the water mains, and the idea for that is that you don't have water sitting in a tank festering and perhaps going bad. But other than that, all of the water services within the house have to go to a cold water storage tank, typically in the attic, that's sized for 24 hours normal capacity. And that's just the way that it's done in Ireland. The idea is that the water main on the street can fail, or it might take a quantity of hours for them to repair it. They don't want people to be without water. So that's why they look for you to have your own local storage. In other countries, it's different. Everything comes in off the city mains, and it's done that way. Here we have water storage tanks. As a consequence of that, it means that all of the end consumers, which I am just generically showing here on the right, they all get water at atmospheric pressure. So you open the tap and you get a dribble of water out. Now you might get very good flow, but there won't be much pressure. It's all down to the difference in height between the top of the water in the water tank and where you're opening the tap or valve or whatever. So what you normally do is to then do hot water. You have a vented or atmospheric hot water storage tank, and in my case it's actually on the ground floor beside the heat source, which was traditionally the back boiler beside a solid fuel, a fireplace basically. And you put water in there, and it's the head pressure of this cold water storage tank that gives the motive force to push the water out the taps. So you get, roughly speaking, balanced pressures, allowing for, you know, a bit of losses, balanced pressure coming out to the hot and cold water consumers. And if you want any way greater pressure out here, you have to pump it. Traditionally how that's been done is people fit, for example, power showers, and they can either have an integral heating element, which is what we have here, or you can also get mixer pumped showers where there's a pump and it allows you to just suck the cold and hot water and pump it locally. That's the traditional way that people dealt with this situation. And it's important to note that for your hot water storage tank, there's an overflow vent back to your tank. So you always have to factor that in. It's just so that you don't, with this heat source here and this isn't sealed, you don't want to create a bomb. Okay, so that's a traditional setup. Were I building a new house, this is what I would do. I would put in a single impeller booster pump, and I'll show an image of a typical one that I've used in the past in the house. And what it does is it boosts the water pressure to both the hot and cold consumers, and it's self-regulating, so it'll hit its target set point of pressure and switch off until there's a demand for someone opens a tap or something. And the hot water storage tank in this case it's pressurized, it's unvented, and there's all sorts of safety requirements. You have to have temperature and pressure over relief valves, so you need proper plumbers who have been trained to do this, and there's expansion vessels and things like that. So that's typically what is done in a modern house. Now, in my case, we are going to leave our vented hot water storage tank for maybe half a year in its present location in the kitchen. It's not ideal, but it has to stay there because we need to do renovation elsewhere in the house. So I need to work with an existing vented tank, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a dual impeller booster pump. So these are quite common. They were fitted throughout the 90s to 2000s. You wouldn't really see them installed in modern houses, but they're still very widely supported. There's a good UK manufacturer, there's a very good supply chain, and you can even buy reconditioned ones, which is what I ended up doing. So a dual impeller booster pump, so it sucks from the vented tank and from the cold water storage tank and provides basically common pressure to the consumers. And then my upgrade path end state, when I do get a better hot water storage tank, a bigger one that can work, has a coil that's much larger surface area to work with a heat pump, and it's in a different location and it's unvented, what I'll simply do is I'll relocate that dual impeller booster pump and I'll use it to boost the cold water supply, either in a common header or split, as I've shown here, into the future unvented storage tank, and it'll end up being the exact same thing from a consumer's perspective. So that's where we are and where we want to get to for our hot and cold water services. Now there is of course nuance in this. The keen-eyed among you will notice that I have diagrammatically shown a cold water storage tank here with a booster pump roughly underneath it, and then a hot water storage tank below it again. There are special nuances that you have to do to achieve that, and we'll get into that. Let's have a look at the end state requirement for the bathrooms to see, are there any other kind of constraints or requirements that we can apply here. So to work back into the water services system, what we actually need to achieve, it's important to look at how we will use it. And in our case, what we're going to have in the main bathroom is, as shown here, we're going to have a shower, we're going to have a double vanity, 2 children, less fighting in the mornings and the evenings, so 2 taps, we're going to have a toilet, and we're going to have a bidet, and that's roughly speaking it. And the idea is to size your pumping arrangement to meet this requirement. Now, one thing I'm going to do, and I'll show you in a moment, is I'm going to limit the water consumption of these appliances to 6 litres a second. I think it's a modern building regs requirement anyway, but even if it isn't, there's also extra credits you can achieve in the DAP application for low water consumption per person per day in terms of energy saving. So it's just to have an eye on not overusing water. So this is our rough bathroom layout, and there's nothing hugely unusual about it. One little nuance I do want to work in is I want to have a dual fuel, it's called, so a radiator that is off the normal low pressure hot water service, so it'll be off our oil boiler for now or a heat pump in future, but also it can be also electrically fed, and I want to feed that using the solar PV during the day when we have free electricity to dry out towels. So that's just one little nuance I want to incorporate. So that's the main bathroom. And then we have a little shower room, weird space, but we're going to keep it because it is actually useful to have 2 showers in the house. And it's just going to be a shower head. There's no great science to it. And then we have a downstairs loo as well. So it's the exact same concept, a loo with a rad, a bidet, and a vanity with a sink. So really pretty straightforward. So in terms of procuring products to achieve all of this, what you can do is you have to think about your pumping in the first instance. And what you can do is you can do something like what I've done here. This was an early design I did where you work out, there's your pump, and you've got your cold appliances here, your sinks, and then you have your thermal store, your hot water cylinder, and then you've got all of your hot appliances. You can do all of that, and you can look at loading units and flow rates and velocities and all that fun stuff. But by and large, what I have found, and from speaking to more professional colleagues, mechanical engineers on this, what you do is you size on the biggest demands, which are your showers, and you want them running simultaneously, yes or no. So that's the simplest way to do it. So if you look at a typical shower, so this is a thermostatically controlled shower. So it comes in this normal bar arrangement, so, and everything is exposed. So if this ever fails or I need to get a new one, it's very easy to do it. I don't have to replace all of the plumbing inside the wall. And it states that its flow rate here is 8 litres a minute. And that's kind of split between hot and cold. So and it's usually 2/3 is to 1/3. So 1/3 of that is hot water, 2/3 of it is cold water. So that kind of gives grands of reference for what you need to achieve. And you can see here it delivers 8 litres a minute at 1 bar. I feel that we're going to go for a higher pressure, so anything between 1 bar and 5 bar. So I think 3 bar is a good middle of the road. And then with our taps, what we're looking at is simple IKEA taps. They'll come as part of the vanity unit, and you can see immediately here they're rated for 5.7 litres per minute. So that kind of gives grands of reference of the kind of consumption. And like the thing is, if this is at 8 litres a minute out of the box, you can also fit these water flow restrictors. So I fitted these 6 litres a minute water restrictors. So this is to help with DAP. So you have to choose a pump in the first instance, and one that's very commonly supported in Ireland. Manufactured in the UK, high quality pumps are the monsoon type. And as I alluded to earlier, I'll want to have the pump located in the attic above the hot water cylinder downstairs for now. So it's important that the pump is capable of doing that. So they have a universal one, which has this little expansion vessel, which basically helps you keep the pump primed, even though it's sucking water. So I have an eye on a 3 bar pump. So that's just the pressure rating of it. And you can see it's middle of the road here, 3 bar. And as far as I understand, this has dual impellers. So, you know, there's cold on one side, hot on the other side. This reading of flow rate on the bottom is in litres per minute. As far as I understand, it's on one side. So it's the same again for hot and cold. So if we're talking about, say, 1/3 of that in hot multiplied by 2 is, I don't know, let's round it up to say kind of 4 or 5 litres a minute. And if we look on here, we've got kind of 5 litres a minute here. We're kind of at 2.27 meters of head, 2.7 bar or thereabouts. I'm perfectly fine with that kind of a number. That's appropriate to us. And if more appliances are switched on simultaneously, so if we switch on all the taps at the same time or things like that, it'll obviously reduce the output pressure as you go down this line, but it's not an issue from what I can see. And as I say, we're going to be using these flow restrictors to make sure that, you know, we don't have any pressure impacts. When choosing these pumps, it's important to look at the instruction manual. So they have a nice little diagram here. They ideally want to have the pump below the supplies to it. So that's the cold water storage tank, that's the hot water storage tank, and then it feeds on the inlet side and it pumps up and out. That's where pumps want to work. Now, what's interesting about these pumps, you can make them work, and they call it a non-preferred arrangement, whereby it sucks the water up from the hot water tank. And it is possible to do that, but the key constraint that you need to achieve is you need to, in any case, ensure that the cold water storage tank is lifted up above the pump. So I've scoped that in the little project. It's important to do that. And another thing to make sure is you do not want any air coming up into this pump. because it mixed in with the water, because that'll cause cavitation and it'll ruin the impeller. So they recommend the use of a cylinder flange, which is basically this thing here, which you insert into your hot water storage cylinder. And the idea is that it takes from below the top of the tank the water up through the center here. You take your pump feed from this and you do your expansion feed still off in the normal way from the top with the air. So the idea is you don't get any air into the water stream, which is important. So those are the kind of parameters to bear in mind. The only other one or two things to contemplate is, oh yeah, and then sizing your pipework. You can leave it to a plumber, but I always find it useful to look at the cut sheet of the most likely products that they're going to use. For example, Qualpex, because the inner area where the water flows is quite smaller, and you can kind of get a sense of what dimension you need. If you start looking at your system velocities, flow rates that you need, the sizes, just to make sure that you're not exceeding pressure drop or very high velocity in any pipework. So you can just draw a straight line across here if you match, say, 3/4 inch Irish to a certain flow rate in any kind of branch, and then you can make sure that your velocities are kind of, say, below 3 meters a second at an outside, just to make sure that you're not trying to ask too much of any one pipe, have noise and have significant pressure loss in it. But a competent plumber will do that for you, or you can go to town and do a huge calculation like this, but the competent plumber will sort you. And what else is there? And yeah, so this is just an example of a towel rad that has both an electric heating element and it has flow and return. So this is, roughly speaking, the components as they relate to water services, and to try end up at a very efficient installation. Let's have a look at the installation process and see how we got on. Okay, so let's see what impact, if any, this had on our BER rating and how close we are to our A rating objective. So I'm in the app, as you can see, I've got it loaded up. We're starting at 284 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year for the house. And we don't need to change anything on building. Ventilation still remains the same. Space heating still remains the same. Water heating, this is where we do have to mess with things. Okay, so in the first instance, we're removing our instantaneous electric shower. And let's see what impact that has. Okay, it's actually made things worse. Okay, interesting. I wonder, because like maybe there's a presumption that you're heating off oil and they can control the grid. Or maybe it's to do with the standing losses in the tank and the losses as you distribute it. I don't know. We have removed our bath. So that's improved it marginally. And then we've got a mixer shower off the unvented hot water system, which actually that doesn't entirely make sense at all. Here, I wonder, can we mixer shower, yeah, off the vented hot water system. Okay, so we'll delete that. Okay, and we have 2 quantity, and it's saying itself 7 litres a minute, but I have fitted flow restrictors down to 6 litres a minute. And let's save and see where we go. 277. So we went from 284 kilowatt hours per meter square per year down to 277. So a bit of an improvement, not huge. The advantage for this isn't so much in terms of absolute energy savings, because we were basically heating everything off electric anyway, and as the grid cleans up, this will clean up. It's more, this is an economical thing. It lets us make more use of the PV solar power heating the water, and load shift. The fact that we have showers early in the morning or late at night, and at least we can use our hot water storage in order to make use of that. Now I just want to sanity check one final thing with pumps and my low water usage. Yeah, we have put that there so we can reduce that. So that's also present on the taps, basically, to flow restrict what comes out of the taps. I think all modern taps, a lot of them, they come with that feature. So I just want to make sure that there's nothing here for pumping. No. So that's it. We've had quite an improvement. So in terms of cost of the renovations, which I estimate, it's staggering the cost that these things end up between builders, plumbers, supplying stuff, things like that. I guesstimate it came out around 25,000 euros for 1 bathroom, 1 shower room, and installing a new downstairs loo, and then all of the upgrades to the plumbing system. It didn't save a huge amount of energy. However, in terms of running cost in future and flexibility in future, it will pay back over probably a prolonged period of time. In terms of commissioning, everything went fine. Just 1 or 2 things that cropped up. I discovered that I had a dodgy thermostat on the heating immersion on the hot water cylinder, and it ended up that it was overheating constantly, and thankfully there was the vent to the attic, so it was dumping hot water into the attic, recirculating it. I imagine had I left it for a few hours, it could have been a different situation, but I caught it in time before we had any kind of issues. So it's just one of those things with an older house and using older equipment that you can't fully trust. There might be issues. And yeah, so far we've run it at the time of recording for about 9 months, and we've had no issues with backing off of water pressure or anything like that. The pump seems to be surviving just fine. There's been no complaints. I'm very satisfied with the installation. So thank you very much for watching. Apologies for the delay in getting this video out. I personally, from a creative perspective, I found it tough to put this video together. I didn't know how I was going to structure a story around the mountains of footage I had, and I long fingered it for quite a while. If you've any comments or queries, please let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to you in the next video, where we're going to be tackling our side extension, the complete structure, and our kitchen. Thank you very much. Goodbye.